Gaslighting. It is a term that I have heard more and more in the last few years. And so if you're unfamiliar, to gaslight. To manipulate someone using psychological methods into questioning their own sanity or powers of reason. What do you do when your students seem to continuously gaslight you? That's what we're going to talk about today. And we are back from another random place in my house because I have been pushed out of my office. We are continuing to get ready to move in a couple of weeks. And so I just have to find anywhere that has a flat wall and a place to put a Post-it note at this point. So here we go. In this video, I want to talk about a few ways that we regularly see this phenomenon happen. And then what are you going to do about it, right? So right off the boat, one of my favorite things that kids would say is, oh, this is like poor man's Family Feud right here. So kids say, it wasn't me, right? You saw a kid doing something and they say that it wasn't them. And you're pretty sure it was them. I mean, you're 99% positive that you saw that kid do that thing and they're saying that they didn't do it. Or, I didn't even do anything. Why am I getting in trouble? I didn't even do anything, right? You know that if you're a teacher, there is a very, very high chance you've heard either one of these terms. And so what do we do with these? What do you do when a kid says this? I'm gonna walk you through how I walk through this, and maybe this will help you the next time this happens in your class. So if I call a kid out, right, either publicly, like I say it in front of the class, or privately, meaning I walk over to them and saying can you stop doing that? Can you stop touching that? Can you stop talking? Can you get to business or whatever it is? And a kid immediately jumps to, I didn't even do anything. It wasn't even me. Why are you calling me? Why are you blaming me for doing it? How do you know it was me? I immediately say that, look, if a kid wants to have a conversation, you're always picking on me. Why are you always picking on me? I immediately I acknowledge what I needed to acknowledge. I address the situation. And then I remind them that right now is not the time for this conversation. But I want you to know that your opinion, is important to me. And I want you to be able to share your voice. So please see me after class, at the end of the day. You decide what that is going to be, during lunch, during study hall, whenever it is, because you deserve my fullest attention, right? So in that moment, I am not just squashing a kid and saying, we're not talking about this right now. I'm not having a power struggle. I'm not feeling pressure to answer their question in that moment. These are all they just lead to madness. And unless I want to pull a super power card, which I never do, it is I call someone on something and then I tell them when they can talk to me. I want to honestly empower my students to push back, even if they're wrong, right? Even if I saw you do that, I saw you hit the kid, I want you to get used to showing up, advocating for yourself, and sharing your voice. It's incredibly important. And then that's going to show a kid how to have maybe a difficult conversation, an uncomfortable conversation, to show up for themselves, to push back against power. These are all good things, but they have to be done in the right time and place, because I'm not going to upend the conversation or the lesson for 30 students just to deal with one student, like when we're in heightened emotion. Also, when you're in that heightened state, you're just trying to survive. You're not trying to learn. You can't actively listen to anyone. So it's just not even a good move to get there anyway. This goes for you as well. As the educator in the room, if you are at a heightened sense, right? You are fight or flight. You feel like everyone's looking at you. You're not really sure what to do. Just say, these are great questions. Please see me after class or after school. And if a kid comes back with I'm not showing up after class, I'm not coming after school, you can't, I'm not doing that. That's up to them. Right? At that point, that's when you contact home, and we're going to talk about that in just a second. It's really important to note here, and I say this from the most personal of experiences, is you cannot be sarcastic when you're saying this. That's a great question. Why don't you come in after school and have a conversation with me about that, right? All this does is piss everybody off. And if your goal is to build a bridge from where we are now to where we want to be. You're not going to do that. What you just did was you lit the bridge on fire and then said, why don't you come across? Yeah, it's great. Come on over here. What are you, afraid of a little fire? And so it's being mindful of that. I know this because I grew up on sarcasm. It was my first language. And then I learned how to talk to regular people. My whole family's sarcastic. We do it all the time. But when you're dealing with kids, you don't know who's going to understand that. You don't know who it's just going to make mad. So it's important to really take it down a notch, leave the sarcasm out, and address it like that. The second thing that I get all the time, this is more of like a fill in the blank situation here, is I now have paper stuck to my foot. This is just like class. This is just like teaching a class, right? It's just like madness all over the place. You call on a kid and it's, I didn't talk. I didn't touch it. I don't know. Well, I did not break it. I didn't break it. I didn't say that. What are you calling it? Why bother me? I didn't say that. Right? It's this having kids make you question your sanity. Now I'm going to say right now, and this is off script, there is a chance that you are wrong. So if you start questioning yourself and you're not really sure, you're like, oh man, it did sound like Brandon, but it was probably Aaron, because we all know that Aaron's always the one doing stuff. It is trying to it's giving yourself a beat, giving yourself a moment. Like I said earlier, it is telling a kid when they can talk to you, but that benefits you too. The other thing that's benefiting too is that it doesn't just give a kid a time and a place and a safe space to speak. It also takes away the audience. It takes away the whole audience. So all their friends, everyone that they have to posture for is now not here. So there's a higher likelihood that they're going to listen to you. So what do we do if kids are doing the I didn't talk or touch it or break it or pour water on it, or I didn't throw a pen at his ear? That's what we're going to get into right now. So one of the ways I like to deal with this, and whether or not the kid did it or not, is going to a student, and maybe not in front of everyone. I don't want to do that. I don't want to ever put anyone on blast and make them feel shameful, make them feel like I'm going to stay. Oh, you want to act like that? Now we're going to make a big deal out of it in front of the whole class. Don't just leave that stuff. That's childish. It is, if it truly wasn't you, this is what I'm saying to a child. If it truly wasn't you, I never want to put you in a position like that again. So I'm going to move your seat to make sure that this sort of thing isn't repeated. Where in the room would you most likely find success? And here's what we're doing here. We are, again, meeting them without sarcasm. We are, again, meeting them and talking to them with dignity. We are, again, having these conversations that are looking at the bigger picture. The bigger picture here isn't that you got blamed, right? If it wasn't you, so be it, right? So let's figure this out so that both of us can win. We're going to move your seat so that you are in a place that you're going to find more success, and I'll be able to figure out that situation should it occur again. The other thing I'm doing is not just putting someone somewhere like in the corner, putting a dunce hat on or something. We are asking them, where in the room do you think you'd find success? That question was not, where do you want to sit, right? I'm not like full tilt giving you the opportunity, because you might just sit next to someone you think's cute, right? I'm not interested in that. You might see, Tim, who's always an issue in class. Aaron might go, oh, I'll sit next to Tim. No, that's a horrible idea. No, we don't put the dynamite next to the fire. It's a bad idea. So where do you think you would best sit to find success? And let the kid kind of survey your room. Think about it. Then have a conversation as to why or why not you think that is or isn't going to work. If you choose to move a child back to a seat later on, that can be an incentive, and that's a whole nother conversation, but that's doable. But moving that seat is definitely important. Now, the last two things I want to talk about, which are really important, which is, what do you do if a kid tells their parent a different story? My floor is very squeaky right now. I apologize. That's what happens. You live in a 130-year-old house. If a kid tells their parent another story, and then how do you move on with the rest of the class? First, kid tells a parent a different story. This is why you do not call. You email in these scenarios. You can set up a phone call afterwards, but emails document. Emails parents can process. They can read to their child. And as a matter of fact, I CC the kid on the email so that they got the email too, so that it is in plain black and white on the computer. They can see what's going on and they know exactly what happened in class today. Should you want to have a conversation with me again, or a parent or a child, that's fine. Let's do it together. Sometimes it's important to bring a third party in that like is someone that kid knows, that parent knows, that they trust, someone that's going to kind of keep the peace a little bit, or like be a neutral party is important sometimes. But emails always work over phone calls. And the last thing is, look, when I'm trying to figure out how to move on with this, sometimes you can just move on. Sometimes that's the best move, right? Which is my last piece of advice. So I'm going to do the last first and then we'll go a little bit out of order. What you're trying to get to is moving on with your lesson. Everybody else deserves a lesson today. Everybody else deserves to learn. Something happened, we're going to learn from this scenario, but I want it to happen in as short a time frame as possible so we can move on. That being said, I do sometimes have to have a conversation with my students, especially if I feel like this is something that's happening a lot. And that conversation usually boils down to us having a conversation about trust, about why trust is so important to you, right? And it's so important to me, and how I want to trust you. And that I understand to some degree that young people will jump to a lie because they jump to not wanting to be in trouble. And there's all kinds of reasons for that I'm not going to get into right now. But that's like, if you just defended yourself right away, I don't know what your scenario is. I don't know what your history is, but you can always come back from that. You know what, Reynolds? I didn't tell you the truth earlier. I did do it, and I apologize. And we had that conversation. I also will do that for students. So I need to be the example of what it looks like to apologize when I know that I'm in the wrong. So after we have that conversation, I let students know, this is what my mom told me when I was a kid, and it worked for me, so I used it in class. I want kids to know that I trust you until you give me a reason not to trust you. And then I have the conversation after that. Like, I've had kids steal money from me. I've had kids break into my classroom, steal stuff out of my desk, out of my jacket. Students take all kinds of things from me, lie to me, blame me for stuff that I didn't do. Like I didn't even do it. But once that happens, I tell kids, look, now that I know that you lied to me and you didn't come forward, like I had to become like super sleuth over here to figure it out. If you make me go full Carmen Sandiego, now you've given me a reason not to trust you. And so now it's harder to come back from that. So sometimes that gives kids enough of a reason, especially if they care for you, especially if they like you, not to do the act, because they know that, man, I do not want to betray Reynolds' trust because I don't want to lose that. And then the last thing, look, with regards, this is really important. With regards to moving on, sometimes you don't feel like moving on. Sometimes you're still hurt. Sometimes you're still mad. Sometimes you're still anxious. Sometimes you're still sad, right? I think, this is what one of my mentors told me, is that teaching is 90% acting. And that's a whole nother conversation in video. But what that means right now is unless you want to ruin and scrap the whole class because your feelings are getting in the way, this is one of those moments where pretending those feelings aren't there right now. All right, are we ready? Can we get back into the lesson? All right, let's get back into this lesson right now. And then you start doing it, it's going to do two things. One, it's going to help you to move on and for kids to learn, which is the ultimate reason that we're there. Two, even acting positive can sometimes, like your brain doesn't know the difference, right? So you just start doing the thing, being what you want to be, and then it just kind of, you lose some of that stuff. So sometimes it's important to just put your feelings to the side so you can show up and be who you need to be in the moment and not let that little moment kind of trigger you so hard. And if it does, maybe that's another conversation and we need to do some deeper work there. But this is what we're talking about with regards to gaslighting. This is what we're talking about when kids refuse to tell the truth, right? So that's it from this random part of my house. Please remember to like and subscribe and all that fun YouTube stuff. And we'll see you next week, gang. Peace.